What's the strangest thing someone has casually admitted to you? He said that he considered himself a piece of shit because a while back, so probably in his teens, he pressured a woman into having sex with him. They were at a party and had been drinking, so neither of them were in any state to be consenting to stuff to begin with. He is not a bad person or a creep. He was a dumb drunk teen boy and he fucked up, only realizing later in life that he'd done something terrible. At the time, he just thought he was getting laid. I'm glad he understands now what was wrong with that situation, and I hope the young lady in question is doing well. My mom once told me she feels nothing for me when she sees me hurt. I played her therapist for years. I would have been happy if she just asked me about my day once a week. I always was under the radar but pretty depressed. Once I had an obvious issue my ex lol, I actually saw my mom worry for me. It changed our relationship. She can be difficult still, but things are better. It'll never be the sort of mother-daughter relationship I dreamed of having as a kid, but I don't mind where things are at right now. She has made up for the hurt in other ways. When I was in grade school, a boy I was friends with in the after-school club told me he liked to put sewing pins into pieces of bread to feed to the seagulls. We were no longer friends after that. Yes, I have tried looking him up to see if he ended up being a serial killer, but dude had a very common name. Bonus points, he ended up being responsible for my first broken nose, as I dared him to try on a skirt from the dress-up bin. Fucker ended up tripping, fell into another kid, who fell into me, and I fell face first into a concrete pillar. My boyfriend's brother was drunk at a bowling grad party and told me he had sex with their mom's cousin, their second cousin, when he was 16 and she was 21. She was tutoring them and allegedly wanted to see his eggplant. She was very smart but not very attractive science student, later scientist. He was already a junior man whore, so his story is it's suspect, but it's very possible she needed some, was obviously decades ago. She ended up marrying a handsome guy who was on the down low but got there very religious. I was doing my side work with one of the hostesses I worked with at a restaurant. I was admitting to her that I washed my hands so often sometimes they would get such dry skin and crack, and that it was hard for me not to pick the scabs sometimes. Gross, I know, but my anxiety loves it. She very happily and enthusiastically admitted to doing the same thing, and then followed up with, the best part about picking your scabs is that you get to eat them. Then what? No. That was the end of that conversation. A guy I used to work with that was heavily involved in gangs, talking very calmly, almost laughingly, about some of the guys in his crew being pedophiles. I'm talking 13-year-olds or younger. I could not stand working with him after that, but luckily he was fired about 2 weeks later. He also talked about how him and his cousin used to kidnap pit bulls, beat them into submission, and injure them in fights. This dude was everything I fucking hate about human beings. I've worked in call centers forever, so I get weird stuff all the time. People just want to talk. I had a caller who I was troubleshooting automotive GPS with, who told me he could identify the ethnicity of a woman by looking at her pubic hair, something he picked up from visiting many sex workers over the years. Or when I worked in insurance and a woman told me that in order to get a set of crystal in her divorce, she gave her ex a blowy. Fun times. I got into a conversation about pets with a woman who used to babysit my kids pretty often. I asked her if she had pets because she liked our dog so much. She said they used to have a boxer that was so sweet, but when they moved into their current house the backyard was mostly dirt and the dog got covered in ticks. She said they called animal control and told them someone dumped a dog in their backyard so they'd come and take her away. I used to have a regular customer when I worked retail who would buy the same item, and it would be like 19.65, and she'd always say, "Oh, 1965, that was a good year." Well, not really, my dad used to beat me. Also had a guy once tell me it was sad I didn't have an accent, because he liked girls who didn't speak English, but I assumed that was some bizarre attempt to hit on me. Still, TMI. Retail experiences are kinda cheating. Was having sushi with a good friend of mine in college and she is complaining about her BF and she suddenly goes, "He just doesn't get me, I can do anal after a big meal." Poor waiter was just staring. Very funny and not that big of deal, but still hilarious. BC, you wouldn't think she'd be into that at all. She was like 5 foot and her BF was like 6 feet 3 inches, so the logistics could be hazardous. A former friend of mine denied pinning and striking his ex-girlfriend that landed him in jail. More than a decade later, he tried to pull the sympathy card by saying he is trying to get out of a bad place, and then without hesitation, admitting he struck his ex because he had no choice and it was the only option to stop the arguing. That did not take long for me to stop talking to him. Several years back I was drinking a beer with my dad and he casually told me his best friend let him fuck him in the butt when they were teens. While butt fucking isn't all that strange, I wasn't aware he was into that, what with him being an unapologetic homophobe. Could be projection, I guess. Anyway, it caught me off guard because we were in the middle of talking about cows. Did case management RN for home care for many years. Met a new patient and his wife in their home. They gave me a short tour of their condo and then told me Sarahs were racist, and we go someplace in the South for winter where the blacks know their place, not like in Florida. I thanked them for their time and told my manager I was never going back. She didn't push it. My father's family friend, who I don't really know and never met in person, told me their mother was stabbed to death just casually in the middle of another relative's birthday. My father just said, "Oh yeah, that happened." It's true. Both of them completely missing the fact that this is definitely not something you open up with when you're just meeting them for the first time. My last roommate admitted to me that she had faked having cancer to get attention. She expressed guilt and embarrassment over her actions, but she ended up later lying to our mutual friends that her father was dying of cancer. He lived in Germany, so it was easy for her to keep this lie going for a bit. I never outed her. I just wanted to get rid of her crazy ass. Guy I work with. We start the same day last week. Never seen or met him before. We're in the sheet metal union, so we run into people a lot you've worked with at other companies. Told me about his roommate fucking his mom, him having to beat his roommate's ass last weekend, and that his roommate called his mom on him. Dude has got to be in his 40s. Had a roommate that got drunk and told me about he and his best friend's fantasy of kidnapping a homeless man and murdering him in the forest just to see what it was like. Was totally blackout and seemingly had no memory of it afterwards. But the invite to go hunting with him that came a couple months later was a real easy no. I was a Lyft driver years ago in Portland, Oregon. Picked up a woman and was taking her to a gym. During the ride, she unloaded on me about her life. Told me that her husband was some high-up exec type at Nike, that he was committing low-level white-collar crimes, and that he was having an affair with one of his secretaries. A fairly new friend coworker, we were both white females, early 20s, and I were talking about relationships and how many partners we each had had. She asked me if it counted as sex when she let a guy put 4 pepperoni sticks in her vagina in high school. I still think about her when I'm at the counter at a Circle K. When I was in the psych ward, this one young woman was in there for severe homicidal and cannibalistic thoughts. She would casually talk about recipes for doctors and nurses and talk about how much she wanted to go to culinary school. She also casually asked me, "Can I eat you sexually and cannibalistically?" When my daughter was in 2nd grade, I sometimes met her at school for lunch. One time sitting at a table with her classmates, one says to me, "Can I tell you a secret?" So I said sure. He said my dad said when he was in college, he had an afro. So I told him, "Well, your dad sounds pretty cool." Recently had in someone who used to be a friend of mine text me saying they're a narcissist. Totally random. But 5 years ago they cut contact with me suddenly and said it was because I was too self-centered. I guess that was projection and they wised up. I took it as an apology. My married friend, let's call her Sally, was wearing a new cardigan, and my other friend told her cardigan was cute. Sally said, "Thank you." It was my boyfriend's dead wife's. I was cold at his house yesterday and he dug it out of the bags he made for donations, sitting around a cafeteria table in college. We were all trading stories about getting mugged in NYC. One guy casually mentions that an older kid beat him up once in high school. He went to the Kizapt building the following week, and shot him dead. Got away clean. That they were on the sex offender registry because of something he did when him and his girlfriend, not girlfriend, were drunk. He said he was a good guy, but if I got fat he would leave. We had only just met on Tinder, were FaceTiming. I hung up and blocked him. An old friend and I were catching up after years of not seeing each other. We got in the subject of cigars and how much we missed smoking them. Then he told me his real thrill is snorting cocaine. That changed the pace of the evening offer quick. I went to an action movie with a buddy of mine who had been in the special forces, and at one point, without taking his eyes off of the movie screen, he leans over and tells me that's not what bullets sound like when they hit a human body. WTF. That he, my best friend, regularly slept with my girlfriend, his sister, from the time they were teenagers, for several years, and it didn't stop even after she and I got married. That really messed up and I was in therapy for months. My brother casually admitted one day that he may have killed a man whilst on holiday in Portugal when he was aged 9 after he decided to throw big rocks off the top of a cliff onto the beach below. He thought he hit a guy. When I was in MCT training at Camp Lejeune, my roommate told me that he had a threesome with his mom and aunt. Dude always seemed off, and his mom came to visit, and he felt her up in front of me, and she didn't react. A female co-worker told me that when she was a kid age unknown to me she would be visited by a succubus and it fucked her. I figured that she was being sexually abused and that this was her mind's coping mechanism. Had a customer at work tell me that he liked to fuck guys in the ass. Not sure why he felt compelled to share that or if it was a joke. Maybe not the weirdest comment ever, but it stuck out to me for some reason. Not to me but to a group at a party after more than a few drinks. He told us how much he liked sheep. It was quite a bit. It was a very D move and he moved out of town never to be heard from again. I like you more than my son. He makes more money than God. During a conversation about chemtrails killing the fish and trees. I'll never forget she told me your name was Deborah like in the Bible. On a date many years ago, the girl I was with dropped into the conversation that she had 3 kids, with the emphasis on had. Yes, I had them adopted because I couldn't be bothered with them. Another good one was something I actually said to my best friend tripping balls on acid walking through a sweltering hot field. I feel like the Jews in the desert. They'll never live that one down. First date after a minimal amount of back and forth prior. Guy tells me in the interest of being upfront that he's a cross-dresser. I appreciated his letting me know and asks lots of questions. I used to work with abused children and they will tell you things at the oddest time, like a child who told me all about a beating he got the night before while I helped him put his socks on. Just recently got told doesn't matter what their politics are, if I agree with them or not, man or woman, target downrange is a target. We were putting up tree ornaments,